Okay, so a very good afternoon to everyone here, and thank you everyone for coming, especially I know I changed the time, which I always try my best not to. Actually tonight, I mean, you don't have to care why I'm changing, but at least I think I feel I owe you an explanation rather than just saying for personal reasons. I play in a band, and tonight we are doing a final rehearsal, so I can't ask them to change the date, okay? But I appreciate your flexibility, especially those who just came from IPA tutorial 4, who just came from that. Okay, thank you so much, because you probably had like 17 minutes for your lunch, but then so did I, okay? So thank you for coming. And today I do have a lot of interesting things I'd like to share with you. And I'm going to start by now, actually, we did say that there are only three take-home assignments. That is true. But there is something else that we would like to ask you to do, and that's going to happen in the tutorial. In fact, if you were to read Paul McGuinness' course outline carefully, you've probably spotted something that we haven't covered yet, and that's what I call the concluding tutorial activity. I'll go over that in just a moment, okay? There are lots of things I want to share with you. May not be able to do all of that today, but it's okay. I want to talk a bit about bonus shares and stock splits, and also holding period returns and so on. I want to talk about dividends versus buybacks, and this is just an extension of what Paul McGuinness was saying to you in class. So we'll try and share with you some real life examples, and then I'll take any questions from there, okay? Now, what is that tutorial activity? So first of all, today we are October 22nd, 2018. So you have 4 more lectures and 4 more tutorials after this one. And time change, this is the time change. Now, assignment 3, I don't know when, but I am guessing it may well be November 10. I don't know yet, okay? That would be your final assignment, take-home assignment from Paul McGuinness, okay? Thank you all for handing it in on time last Saturday. It is much appreciated. Is everyone okay with that? Hello? Yeah? There is one more assignment, okay? Now, what is this tutorial presentation thing? Okay, I'm going to tell you now. Now, final exam, you should know. We would like to ask you to do something, all right, in the coming tutorials, and it actually, everything is spelled out here. Now, before you just look at the 3 words and think, oh my God, he's adding to my workload. you know what? This is something that you probably already have done. And you will see in a moment what I mean by that, okay? So I'm going to split you guys up into groups of 4. Okay, so I'll do that for you. So there will be around 15 teams across the whole class, 7 or 8 teams per tutorial. And given a topic, I would like you to talk about a real commercial transaction for about 15 minutes between the 4 of you, okay? So you really, you just talk for 3 or 4 minutes max. What kind of transaction? You don't need a project report. I'm not asking for that, all right? And of the 10% for attendance and participation, 5 will come from this. And the presentation dates will be, for you guys, if you regularly attend T1, it's going to be November 5th or 12th. Or if you are in T2, then November 10 and 17, which is what? Which is this? Oops. For the T1 people, okay? So basically, it's happening in 2 weeks. And now, the reason I said that this is probably something you already have done, okay? You listen to me carefully, all right? I do not need you to do a lot of work or make a lot of pretty slides. So some charts, some numbers, and a case study is all I need. Actually, you probably need charts and numbers and commercial parameters more than anything else, okay? Now, why is that? I'm asking you to do one of these, okay? Now, an IPO should be a relatively recent one. Don't tell me about an IPO that happened in, 1982 or something, okay? Or a rights issue, or a stock split, or a bonus issue, or a stock buyback. Ideally, we prefer that, so there are, strictly speaking, there are 10 topics. Something that either went well or something that went badly, okay? Ideally, there will be around 7 or 8 teams per tutorial. So we would like the topics to be divided. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay? I will tell you very shortly, what team you belong to. And you just need to talk for around 15 minutes. Now, the reason I said you probably have done this, ladies and gentlemen, if you are serious about becoming a finance professional, okay, if you are about to go for interviews, if you already have been to interviews, some of you have, someone went to see Nomura last Friday, okay, you really should know this already. People will ask you, okay, tell me about an IPO that you was paying attention to. Tell me about a recent IPO that you think didn't go so well. Okay, these are standard questions that professionals will ask you. And I would encourage you to pick something that you find interesting or a little bit unusual. Okay, that's how you're going to score points. If you just report on something that's totally boring, it just makes me wonder, why are you telling me that? So something that is a bit more interesting, okay? So you can tell, I think the three things you need more than anything else would be the commercial parameters, okay? So if it was an IPO, how big was it? When was it? What was the price? Oversubscription, this and that. You know more than you know better than me. So the terms, and then maybe the price history, and then some other numbers that you find interesting, and then you tell me whether it went well or whether it went badly. That's the whole point, okay? If it went well, so I'm kind of asking you to analyze a deal, I don't know if you get a chance to do that in other classes. Do you? Do you? No? Well, here you go. Okay? So we'll do this together. Is that okay? It isn't a lot of work, okay? It is not. I'm estimating that each member may have to contribute like 2 or 3 slides maximum, okay? It's not the slides, it's not how pretty it is, it's whether your story is an interesting one, okay? Well, I haven't given any restrictions on where, but if you talk about something that is of an international nature, Hong Kong market or the US, it's easier for everyone to understand. Okay. Now this is just some suggestions. You don't have to do this. Okay. You don't have to follow me, but like the background and the terms, actual execution, did it go well? What was the green shoe? What was the IPO price? Was there any buyback? Who was involved? And what are the reasons it went well or not? Okay, you go to Bloomberg or Google, you'll find that stuff in 15 minutes. Okay, and this is just some suggestions for you. Okay, all right. And so there will be a lot of deals that we can all share, and everyone will get to benefit from it. Is that okay? Just suggestions. Okay, you don't have to follow this. So I'm really giving you a lot of freedom to do not much work between 4 persons. Okay? We will try to make sure there is no free riding. There's been the odd complaint here and there, not many. Okay? So most of you don't do it, don't free ride. Okay? But we'll try to keep an eye on that. Is everyone okay? Yeah? Maybe you already have a deal in mind, okay? You should, anyway. All right, now that is for the, oh, okay, yeah. So can you please hand it in? So I want to be fair to everybody. So you will hand it in, just hand it into Blackboard. In 2 weeks' time, okay? All right. I hope you have fun doing that. Okay, now for today, let me just begin by very quickly going over assignment number 2. Well, you guys are okay with that? Yeah? Now, I will go through this very quickly, and like I said before, I won't waste your time if I feel there are questions that you can handle yourself anyway, like all these true-false questions and fact-finding questions are not worth explaining. But I will jump to, actually this one, when I first looked at it, my first reaction was it doesn't look that different to some of the questions in assignment 1. It's still talking about listing and IPO and existing shares and new shares and GC and major shareholders and so on. But anyway, let's take a quick look at this, okay? So you have company STR, incorporated in the Cayman Islands, set to list on Hong Kong Exchange through a global offer of 1,000 shares. 900 is new, 100 is existing, and the 100 shares are sold by the company founder PRV, and also 10% is assigned to the retail tranche and 90% to the international tranche. And immediately prior to the global offer, the entire company had 3,200 shares outstanding with a par value 10. I don't find that so too relevant, except for accounting purposes. Apart from 128 of such shares held by private investor PEQ, all the others, and Paul even did the subtraction for you, 3,200 minus 180 is this number here, okay, owned by the founder PRV, and it has agreed to lend 150 million shares for the IPO, okay? And suppose the price was $10 per share, and the subscription or oversubscription was 51 times. Given strict compliance with practice note 18, there is a clawback, which means the retail will get 40% of the initial IPO offer as is announced in the prospectus, okay? Now, you lose sight of the detail if I just keep talking, so the way I like to approach these questions is I just quickly draw the diagram and see if I can capture all the details, okay? So here is, now I'll change the color today back to black. So this is what it looks like. And I already know that the old shares, all of them, is equal to 3,200, of which a tiny portion, 128, is owned by private equity, and the other, what is it, 3,072 owned by PRV. And then there are new shares issued, right? How much? How much new shares are being issued? Thank you. Just testing if you're still awake. New shares is 1,000? No. 900, okay? That's this number here. Now, I don't know about you, but I find it very comforting drawing these kind of diagrams when I'm tackling the questions. So now I can see quite clearly what's going on. There's actually there's over allocation as well, but let's deal with that in a moment, okay? All right, now if we were to keep going, then also note during the first week of trading, GC, the global coordinator, bought back 50 million shares through the secondary market at an average price of $9.98. The IPO price actually is 10. Now that's important because that is the anchor that drives everything. Okay, so they actually were able to buy it back at a slightly cheaper price. But 1 week later, they actually sold those 50 million shares that they bought back, okay, at 10.20. So you can see that in IPOs, there's more than one way for you to make money. Apart from the fees you are charging your client, you know, the fees for arrangement, for placement, for underwriting, that's a big fee, okay? You can earn kind of accidental profit when you buy back the stock from the market during the first, 21 days of stabilization, and then you end up selling it back at a higher price, okay? That's why banks love IPOs, right? But they did that, so it would be as if that on market purchase never really happened, except for the money that you've made. Maybe the issuing client doesn't even know about it. Well, they would know because they can watch the price. They can watch their share price trading in the market, and they would know that as it dips below or as it gets near the IPO price, you probably were in the market trying to support it. Okay? Everyone is okay with that? Yeah? Now, so what is the question? Just before the end of the prescribed stabilization period. So GC surely must and will fully exercise the green shoe option. They need all those shares, okay? Forcing is a strong word. Requiring or requesting STR to issue 135 million new shares. Where does that number 135 come from? Very good. 135 is 900 times 15%, okay? So although the total over allocation is 150, only part of it is coming from issuance of new shares. So I assume that the other 15 will come from the existing shareholder selling even more than they promised, okay? So you're going to add this 150. No, you don't add 150. Okay, I nearly made that mistake myself. Okay, so you add 135. Okay, and then I think we are in pretty good shape after this. And calculate the percentage of equity retained by PRV. Now, as I said to you, this is what they have to begin with. This is what they promised to sell. They have to sell some more because of the green shoe exercise. And then the number of shares just will go up by 900 plus 15% of 900. Okay, these questions are not hard. Okay, so it's 69.82, sorry. Okay. Determine the number of shares sold in the IPT, in international placing tranche. Okay. The number of shares allotted to. Okay, now as I said to you last time, it is always a case of. Okay, so before. This is the institutional, and this is retail. Now, it always starts with whatever was the official announced size, so let's say 1,000 shares, okay? Multiplied by 90 plus 150. It always starts like that, and this one is 100. Now, after, that depends on the clawback. Now, it looks like we have a 40% clawback. So the 1,000 times 90%, sorry, okay? This is 1,000 times 10%. But after the clawback, this actually becomes 40%. So this becomes 60. But this doesn't change. Oh, it's not 64, 60. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah? All right, now, and that is what you actually will find in the question. So 60% of 1,000 plus the over allocation, all of that goes to institutional. Okay. After greenshoe exercise, what is PEQ's percentage ownership? Now here, it must be obvious to you. You have to read the small print. So they have an anti-dilution clause. So you just work out, in fact, the answer is not only given in the small print, the numbers are there. So they're going to buy 36 and they're going to buy another 5.4. This number doesn't change. It's the same number as the one above it. Okay. And at the end of the stabilization period, how much profit do they make? Now they actually make some profit. That's the whole point. Okay. So the amount of profit they make is because they sell high, buy low. Well, no, here is they buy low, sell high. Okay, so they buy at this price, and then they sell at this price. Okay, so it's 50 million shares multiplied by 22 cents, which is $11 million. Okay, what happens to the 150 million shares purchased by the GC through the full greenshoe exercise? Where do they go? All right, instead of going through this text, which can be quite boring, okay, let me draw you the diagram. So let's say this is a client and this is GC, and now this is the market, the entire market, and I'm not going to split them up into institutional and retail, but on day one they would have sold 1,150 shares. These are shares, okay, of which STR actually officially only issued 90 on that day, okay, and PRV said they will sell 100. Now that still doesn't square because you've got 1,000 going in, you've got 1,150 going out. Settlement will fail because there are not enough shares to go around. What is the solution to that? I'll do that in blue because PRV has promised to lend. Now, this is not a sale transaction. They're going to lend the shares to GC. So at least you literally, physically, you can settle. So now settlement will not fail, okay? Because you got exactly the same number of shares going in as shares going out. However, I'll use another color. So GC actually, at a later date, they bought back 50, but they also sold back 50, okay? So this, apart from the profit they made, as far as the green shoe is concerned, it isn't really in the picture. Okay. Now, so at maturity, well, not maturity, but at the end, when the stabilization period is concluded, they're going to issue how much more? Thank you. Who said that? You just said 135 now. Okay. I owe you some dollars. Remind me if I don't remember. Okay. I'm going to use another color. I got lots of colors. So this one is a new issue, 135. Okay, do we have enough? No, we don't. Because now GC needs to return back that 150, but there's only 135 coming in. Okay. So how are they going to manage that? Well, in fact, PRV will sell an additional 15. Why 15? Well, that is 15% of the initial amount that they promised to sell. So now I think everything will square. So they lend 150 to GC. GC needs to pay back 150. So there's 150 going in, 150 return, and that 150 return comes from 135 going this way, and then 15 going that way. Okay, now there must be at least 25 different ways you can account for these numbers and different sequences, but whatever you do, the numbers will add up. Is that okay? It makes sense to you? Are you guys comfortable with this? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, later you get this page, as you know. So that's all this text is trying to tell you that. Okay. I just drew a diagram, which I find far easier to handle. Okay, what else? Determine the amount of gross funding. Now, these questions must have become so easy for you now. Gross funding is the share price multiplied by, if it was a company, the number of new shares, okay, which is this one. If you are an existing major shareholder, it's just a question of how much you sold, which is this one here. Is everyone okay? Yeah? The market cap, now this number, still the same old number that you had a bit further up, same as this one. So I said, if you get that number right, you find yourself recycling that number quite often. Obviously, the total number of shares of a company is the driver for a lot of calculations. Okay. Under what conditions might a reverse clawback apply? That's just the rule for Hong Kong Exchange. I think the rest of these questions are more of a fact-finding nature. It's asking about par value. Okay, this is now question K contains elements of other topics such as stock splits. And it's saying that suppose a few weeks before the organization of the global offer, the company did a bonus or capitalization issue on terms of 79 for, okay, you call that a bonus issue? So you get 79 new shares for every share outstanding. This looks more to me like a stock split, right? So after completing, you have 3,200 shares. Well, that means you must have had this number divided by 80 to start with, which will be 40. Yeah, 40. Okay. And the par value is 10 cents each. Well, then the paid in capital will be simply $4 million. Okay. Of which PRV would own, these are just ratios, okay? And the other investor will own this. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for asking. Do not hesitate. Do not be shy to ask me questions when there's something you don't understand. Otherwise, I just think that you know what's going on. But for this question, would somebody else like to have a go? Somebody else wants to question I. Okay, the answer is there, but why is the answer the answer? What is it actually asking you? I think I kind of touched on this. I touched on this earlier when we spoke about generally the scenarios of oversubscription. So you have the global coordinator and you have the issuer. And let's say they are planning to issue 1,000 shares. And the IPO price, the range of the IPO price is, let's say, between $9 and $10. Okay. Now, as you know, in the retail market, if you are a retail kind of person, so I told you how when you go to a broker, if you are retail, and you tell them, I want to apply for 1,000 shares, they quite often say to you, okay, would you like to put in an application for 10,000? You remember I said that? Yeah. The reason they encourage that, they would tell you, oh, everybody else is doing it. So if everybody else's application is inflated by a factor of 10, so if it's 10 times oversubscribed, then everyone will just get whatever they apply for. So that's kind of the logic. So the question here becomes, if on the whole, let's say originally they were planning to give 100 shares to retail, okay, but it is oversubscribed 5 times. When you apply, so 5 times oversubscribed. Okay, so the retail people actually ask for 500 shares. You can put in 1 million if you want, doesn't make any difference. So the retail tranche people actually have to come up with the funds, which is 500 shares times the share price, the IPO price, which is the top range of the IPO indication. So that's $5,000. Now the question is asking this. The question is asking, where does this money go? Where does the money go? The money actually goes to, now I'm using dollar signs, $5,000. The money goes here. They get to keep it. It's good, isn't it? It is the closest thing I can think of to free money. Although you're not going to subscribe for 500 shares. Sometimes it can be like 700 times oversubscribed, in which case you are locking in a lot of funds, even for a very short time. Okay, so the operational procedure is, if you or your aunties and uncles, mom and dad, you go to a broker or a bank and you say, I want 1,000 shares, and they ask you, would you like to oversubscribe? You say, yes, but maybe you don't have the money. Maybe you do. Okay, if you do, they will just lock up those funds. Even if you don't, they just borrow the money from the street, and they would place that money on your behalf in the issuer's bank account. Okay, so you are the one, in that case, you are the one paying interest on that loan, while the issuer is the one earning interest on the other side. Are you with me? Yeah? Everyone is okay with that? You understand the kind of operational mechanics behind it? Okay? But whether you are borrowing or not, I mean, maybe you have $1 billion, in which case you don't need to borrow. But if you were to borrow, then the global coordinator will simply go to the money market, borrow. So let's say you only have $500. Then they will borrow the other 4,500, and so they'll lend it to you. So now you can play. Are you okay with that? The lady who asked that question. Is it okay? Yeah. Yeah, maybe it wasn't obvious what they were asking. Yes. You bet. That's why they're in this game. There are all kinds of fees and stamp duties and bid offer spreads and service charges and so on. But what are you thinking of specifically? When you do this, whether the global coordinator gets to charge something. Yeah, yeah. Because, what kind of interest? Because for the duration of about 1 week, okay, I'll draw this timeline again. We did discuss this, but I think it was earlier on in the term. So as far as the retail tranche is concerned, so there is a subscription period, but at the end of that subscription period, which is typically around 7 days before IPO, so for that 7 days, you have already placed your funds with the broker. So this is when subscription ends. But you have placed far more money than what is likely to be required. So for that 7 days, you have given the broker a lot of money. And when you give people money, you don't put it under the pillow. You put it in some kind of a bank account. But what they do is they give it to the issuer, and the issuer will put that money into their own bank account, therefore earning some interest. Okay, even if it's tiny. And it's getting bigger because the interest rate cycle is now turning. Okay, so it's all related. So now it is not exactly insignificant anymore. Okay. Is that okay, Harris? Yeah. I think that's all I want to say this week for assignment. Oh, yes. Yeah. H. Wow. All right, to be honest, I haven't read that note in detail, but if you have SRT is less than 1 and SRIPT is also less than 1, we're in trouble because that means the IPO is totally undersubscribed. Notice that this is an and condition. So it's saying that if the institutional tranche is oversubscribed, however little, okay, but the retail tranche is undersubscribed, then you will have some shares reallocated to the institutional. That kind of makes sense, right? No, it's underwritten. The word underwritten means if I am Goldman Sachs or I am Morgan Stanley and you issue 1,000 shares, if for any reason we cannot sell all of it, my book, okay? It's a big risk to take. It's not a joke because by the time you need to take those shares as an underwriter, it must mean that your IPO is not going well. There's not really a lot of demand out there, and you're going to take those shares and you're going to sit on it. Okay, you might be able to hedge, you might not, but if you're not, then you could potentially be staring at losses. Okay, trading losses. Yeah. Well, you can't claw back because both parties, both the retail and the institutionals, are not interested. Okay. What 21? Hmm. Do you all know what an exchangeable bond is? It's a certain class of financial instruments where so let's say Credit Suisse issues an exchangeable bond and sells it to BlackRock. An exchangeable bond. Now, the underlying can be anything. So it can be based on the shares of, let's say, Microsoft. And Microsoft wouldn't even care, and they wouldn't know that this was going on. And BlackRock will give them $100. Okay. Now, there are several things. There are things that Credit Suisse can do in order to hedge this transaction. The most obvious is to go to the equity market Thank you. And actually buy some shares. They don't have to. Okay, this is when a trader's discretion comes into play, but let's say they do. Okay, the point here is whatever you do, whether you hedge it or not, an exchangeable bond does not make any difference to the actual number of shares in Microsoft. Okay, if the client was to exercise their right and take delivery of Microsoft shares, you have to give them real physical shares that you must have acquired from somewhere. Okay, so exchangeable bonds does not involve, and the not really should be, does not involve issuance of new shares. I think that is really the key point of this question. It does not involve issuance of new shares. If you are Credit Suisse and if they exercise on you and you don't have those shares, go and get some. All right, but by that time it might already be too late. So you have losses because you had a short position that you didn't hedge. But maybe you already have shares on day one when you issue this bond, in which case you are hedged. Okay, but the key point of this question is this. Okay, because it does not involve issuance of new shares, therefore whatever valuation metric that involves the per share, earnings per share, what other PS do you have? EPS? Whatever per share parameter does not change because the number of shares has not changed. No? I didn't even read the rest of the question. If COM holds such bonds on its balance as a financial exercise of the bond by a given investor imparts no dilution effect. We're talking dilution. Okay, now so the focus is not on who got the dividend. The focus is on whether there is any dilution. There cannot be dilution because dilution only happens when the number of shares is changing. Is that okay? Sure. I really like it when you guys ask questions. I'm serious, okay? That's what tutorials are for. So as a result, is that okay? Yeah. Why do you think that? Why do you think so? Yeah. All right. If
but if you don't issue new shares, then there is no dilution.
I think you may, if I may say so, you may have a slight confusion between CB and EB, I suspect. Okay, now it's quite common for students to mix up the two. Do you know the difference between a convertible bond and an exchangeable bond? Because your question or what you're asking me potentially is valid if we are talking about a CB. Even though in that case there may still not be a dilution effect, but if you are talking about a CB, okay, what is a CB? A CB is, okay, here I'm talking about Microsoft. So let's just stay with that example, okay? A CB would be when Microsoft itself issues a bond, a CB, okay, which will contain an option on Microsoft, and then you pay par, let's say, okay? So you are BlackRock. Now, in that case, yes, you can have all kinds of dilutions happening because potentially this can involve Microsoft issuing new shares. But this is not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is up here. This is entirely a transaction between Credit Suisse and BlackRock. And if this EB, if it was exercised, okay, then what would happen is that Credit Suisse will give some Microsoft shares to the investor, okay, but these are already shares that already exist in the market. So Microsoft wouldn't care, wouldn't know that this was going on. This is entirely a matter between Credit Suisse and BlackRock. That is the difference. So you don't even touch Microsoft in a transaction, the company that is, okay, in a trade like this. Is that okay? So make sure you understand. Yeah. All right. Now, by giving you some real examples, I ended up confusing you. How about I wipe that out? Com and int. Jesus. Um, this is com. This is not in. This is investor X, and the EB is issued on INT, and this is equity market, and this is INT. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now first thing, this is not X, this is INV. Okay, let me read that quite carefully now, okay. Well, okay. Now I think I get the question that you're asking me. Um, well, um, you can look at this question in a simple way, and you can make it really, really complicated. And I'm sure that was not the intention of Paul McGuinness. Now, let me explain what I mean by simple way. The simple way to look at it is that, and I take your point. You're right. What you just said. Okay. The simple way to look at it is you issued an EB and you are fully hedged. You are fully hedged. So whether they or I shouldn't say when they exercise on you, they will just simply take something that you already have. Okay, so that has no impact on your earnings. That's a simple way of looking at it. Okay, now you might be thinking, oh, what if this bond that I'm holding in my balance sheet, what if it pays dividends and this and that, and I have an income, and now I don't have an income? That's the complicated way of looking at it, which I suspect was never the intention of the question. But even if you were to look at it that way, even if you were to look at it that way, um, if I have a bond on the balance sheet, so not bond, if I have those stocks on the balance sheet and it's about to pay a dividend. So let's say today the price is $11. The price of the stock was $11, okay, because it includes a dividend that's paid to me, okay. But it depends on whether the EB investor actually exercise before or after that dividend is paid. In the end, you don't earn any extra money or you don't lose money, even if they claim it before, okay. And if they claim it after, you may have that extra dollar in your pocket, but then the share price will drop to 10. Okay, so on the asset side of your balance sheet, it's still 1 plus 10, it's still 11. So it doesn't have any effect. But I don't think the intention of the question goes down to such a deep level. Okay. Yeah. But thank you for asking that. All right. Um, okay. Now, I I want to actually just spend a little time because there are a lot of. I will stop here for the assignment number 2, and we'll pick it up from next week. So um, now I want to talk about something which came up in the last tutorial. Somebody asked me a question. Actually, I think was it Madeline who asked me that question regarding the listing of Baidu. It wasn't you. Wasn't you? All right. Okay, just to refresh your memory a little bit. Now, I think you all remember when we started talking about ADR, American Depository Receipts or American Depository Shares, okay? So let's say you know what that is? That's New York, all right? So this is Florida, and this is the Cayman Islands. Now, we spoke about American Depository Receipts, and I think the explanation I gave to you last time was that you would normally do that if for some reason you are not able to list your shares in the American market. But as you heard yourself clearly from Paul McGuinness on Saturday, in fact, most companies, if they want their shares to be tradable in the US, they wouldn't do a direct listing, but they would do it via the ADR route. And he gave you the reason for that. Remember that? What was the reason he gave? Because a lot of pension funds cannot buy. If you were Cheung Kong, if you were Cathay Pacific, all right, so you are incorporated in Hong Kong. So your company is based in Hong Kong, is born in Hong Kong. Your shares, your original equity comes under the law of Hong Kong and all the incorporation framework in Hong Kong. Okay, it's very hard for you to take those shares and have them listed in New York because a lot of pension funds are not allowed to buy it. So what they do is you indirectly list them by connecting. So let's say you have shares in Hong Kong, or in the case of Samsung, you have shares in Korea. So you can connect with New York via an ADR program. So the ADR program simply takes your shares wherever they might come from, and then they are listed in New York. Now, and this is important, okay, so listen to me. So someone was asking me, so during the last tutorial, okay, listen carefully. Somebody put up their hand and said, Sam, I'm now looking at the website for Baidu, okay? And it says that Baidu is listed in New York. And Baidu also has an ADR program in New York. So how can they do both? Okay, that was a question put to me. And the answer to that is Baidu shares the raw shares under their home the incorporation jurisdiction. Those shares are not listed in New York. Okay, the ADR of Baidu is listed in New York. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Now that is the important difference. So in a case like Baidu or Alibaba, okay, now here is when things get interesting. You look at something like HSBC, for example, okay. Now HSBC shares are actively traded in Hong Kong. And you look at Samsung. Samsung shares are actively traded in Korea, okay. They just want to open another channel for American investors to access those shares. So therefore they do the ADR. Now, this is not the case, I don't think, for someone like Alibaba or someone like Baidu. Okay, the structure is quite complicated, and I don't pretend to be an expert on that. So some Hong Kong companies, when they have H shares, So these can be turned into ADR instruments, but if they were A shares, they cannot. Okay, so companies like Alibaba, for example, they actually set up a company in the Cayman Islands, and it's often called a VIE. Do you know what that stands for? Variable interest entity. Okay, now it's a company in Cayman Islands, which I think has a contract with Alibaba back home, Alibaba. So this company in Cayman Islands has a contract with Alibaba that Alibaba will transfer all the profits to this VIE, and they are listing this VIE via the ADR program. So you are not one step away, you are two steps away from the real company sitting in China. Are you with me there? Yeah? The first barrier is the ADR itself, and the second barrier is this VIE structure. And I think that's what Hong Kong regulators have so many problems with, because of the ownership structure and because of the different share classes. Because if you are an investor in this VIE, I suspect your control over the actual company would be quite limited. Okay, but like I said to you, the American philosophy is different. Okay, they say, okay, I give you everything, up to you to decide, which is not really the Asian philosophy. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, I think that's a point worth clarifying, because otherwise there might have been some confusion. Okay, now another interesting thing to share with you is what is the big deal with Cayman Islands? Do you even know where it is? Who's ever been to the Cayman Islands? Who knows what is the size and population of Cayman Islands? Okay, the population of Cayman. Okay, make a guess. Wentao, what do you think is that? You don't need to Google it. Don't Google it. Okay, I'm not interested whether you give me the answer, but whether you know. 100,000 people in Cayman Islands. Less. Huh? 500,000. 100 people. Come on, 100 people in Cayman Islands. No. It's 60,000. All right. Yes, there are more people in Sartine. Okay. Now, so what is it that with? There are a lot of these. Um, all right, I want to just spend the next 5 to 10 minutes telling you something quite interesting. Okay, and that has to do with these are called offshore tax-friendly jurisdictions. Okay, now what the fuss is all about. So you often hear about these places far, far away. Do you know roughly where the Cayman Islands are? Just approximately. Which ocean is it in? Is it the Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, or Atlantic Ocean? Which one? Huh? Pacific? Jesus. Who said Pacific? Your geography teacher will be heartbroken. Did you say Pacific? No, it's Atlantic. It's somewhere off the coast of Miami, where you have this bunch of islands, the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, British Virgin Island, BVI, Bahamas, and Curacao, which I think was a Dutch colony. They're all around there, just off the coast of Miami or Florida. Okay, now What do you know about them? Well, I told you about one of them, okay, which is Cayman Islands has a population of 60,000 people. The area of Cayman Islands is 250 square kilometers. It's about the size of Hong Kong Island, not Hong Kong, Hong Kong Island plus Lantau Island. Okay, now that's how big it is, and 60,000 people. So you might wonder, why is it that a place so small can become world famous and a home to all these companies? It's all to do with tax, or mostly it's to do with tax, okay? So all of these previously were, I think, colonies of one form or another, mostly under the British, and tiny, tiny places. And when they left, 50s or 70 years ago, actually the British asked them, do you want to have independence or not? As far as I know, Cayman Islands said, no, we don't, okay? We're quite happy to say, and then they became what's called British Dependent Territory. So they have the English legal system running there, including all the company laws and so on. And then they had the idea, okay, why don't we use that place to set up a platform where all the companies from all over the world can go there and they can set up, they can get incorporated in Cayman Islands, and there is no company tax. There is no company tax in Cayman Islands. Okay, and then we will use commercial English commercial law and company law. So in the end, it boils down to a matter of trust and tradition. There is nothing to stop you going out to Changzhou, okay, and declare that, okay, now I want to incorporate, but Changzhou is part of Hong Kong, which is part of China, so you can't do that. But you get the idea, right? So a tiny little island, okay, suddenly become home to hundreds of thousands of companies all over the world. And in fact, if you were to look at, let's say all right, I have a page on NASDAQ website where they give a list of all the companies, either American companies or look at the left-hand side, region, Asia, Australia, and South Pacific. Now, I'm willing to bet you that all of these companies are listed in the US indirectly via an ADR program. You scroll down the list, you see someone you know. Do you see someone you know? Baba. Okay. So Alibaba Group Holding Limited is a company, I think, is incorporated in the Cayman Islands. Okay. So they are listing their shares indirectly via an ADR program, pretty much like the diagram I just drew here. Okay. And is everyone okay with that? Because if you understand this, okay, you are a big step ahead to becoming, a true banking professional. Okay. Plus, some of you badly need some lessons in geography. Okay. Now, it's around that area, but I don't think they belong to Cuba, if that's what you mean. So see how tiny it is. You practically can't see it. Yeah, it's surrounded by Cuba and Jamaica and this and that. I think that's really the genius of the English legal system, that they thought of an idea like that. And then if you have a company like Alibaba going there, it's not a joke. The company is worth $200 billion, okay? listing or incorporating in a place with less people than Sha Tin. Okay, you don't get people coming to Sha Tin to list there. Okay, are you with me? Now I haven't been to Cayman Islands. Okay, but I have been to the Bahamas. Beautiful place. Okay, it's not exactly Manhattan. I'll show you some pictures. Okay, so just for a laugh, this is so Bahamas is another sort of tax-friendly jurisdiction. This is Bahamas. I took this picture. It doesn't exactly look like Wall Street, does it? Right? But you know, if you have a company incorporated there, you know that's the kind of place you're looking at. Another one. Actually, Bahamas. Oh, this was 10 years ago. Bahamas is famous for one thing. So who likes pop music here? Who is a fan of Western rock music? Bahamas has a very famous recording studio called Compass Point. And if you are anyone of significance, at some point, you probably recorded a CD in the Compass Point studio in Bahamas, including famous artists. This is good, you know, dinner conversation with your client, don't you think? They talk about Bahamas. They say, oh yeah, have you been to Compass Point Studio? So including Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Julio Iglesias, the Rolling Stones, Etta James, that's a jazz singer, Grace Jones, Shakira, Celine Dion, U2, Saga, Robert Palmer, Talking Heads, Dire Straits, Bob Marley, Eric Clapton, James Brown. It's a very, very famous recording studio. That's the one in Bahamas. Now, you know what's another thing that sometimes makes me laugh is I once set up a company in Singapore, and it's just a very small one, okay, from Hong Kong. So I did it kind of remotely. And according to Singapore law, if I'm from Hong Kong and I ask the lawyers in Singapore to set up a company incorporated in Singapore, you need some kind of local dude to be one of the directors. Now, it's not a director that can draw money from you, not just someone who signs papers and get your mail and receive phone calls. So these can even be part-time people, okay? And they get paid a tiny fee. Now, I got no idea who that director was, okay? But he was appointed by the service provider to me, okay? Just some random dude in Singapore. And I think there are people who do that as a full-time job, okay? And I suspect in the Cayman Islands, there will be people that all they do is they are kind of non-executive director, and they provide an address or a post box and a telephone number and email, okay? And just someone you can contact. And I don't know, I think a guy like this can be a director. This was in the Bahamas. You see my point? Yeah? Anyway, I took this picture. Okay. It's a beautiful place. That's why all the musicians and artists like to go there, and they just record a song in the studio, and then they go down the beach, and then they lie there, and then they just, you know, have a drink. Okay? So now you understand about Cayman Islands? We keep talking about Cayman Islands, you know, all the time. What the hell is Cayman Islands? Where is it? What the hell do they do? And why is it popular? Okay, so now I hope you have some idea. Okay, I think I'm going to let you go, and thank you for coming at a different time. If you haven't signed in, please do so, and we'll continue our discussions next week. Okay, lots of other interesting things I haven't shared with you yet. Okay. All right, thanks everyone.